Hi there, so this is going to be a really quick tutorial on how to write a basic jazz tune. So we've been looking at kind of extended chords and things like that, and the next kind of step is to really think about writing a jazz tune. So there are these things called jazz standards, and they have a lot of conventions. And one of the conventions for a start is that often they're in 32 bar structures. So if you count up all the bars in this piece, there are 32 of them. And if you think about it, it's because it's divided into four kind of groups of 8 bars. We've got 8 bars up here, then 8, that takes us to 16, then another 8, 24, and then another 8 takes us up to 32 bars. So it's like four groups of 8 bar ideas. And it follows this kind of structure. AABA is super common, AABA, right? So you do something in maybe the first 8 bars, and then you do something very similar in the next 8 bars, right? So sort of repeat the section above. Then the B section comes, which is where you do something actually quite different and contrasting. And then you bring back the initial A idea, again, with maybe a different ending or something like that. So it involves a lot of repetition. So yeah, we're going to have a look at kind of doing this and doing it with notation. And we're also going to make use of a feature where kind of Musescore will play chords for us if we write them in a specific way. So we'll get some nice kind of chord sounds. So if we go over to start with a document I've got to kind of talk through, there we go, talk through what's going on really. So you've got these kind of extended chords, which this is the table we've kind of been working on. So if we work through the kind of chords, C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G7, A minor 7, then B minor 7 flat 5, right? So these are the kind of chords that we discovered are in a major key, and that's what the sevenths are. And then if we kind of work up through kind of working out that chord in thirds, it's like the C major 7 is C, E, G, B, and the C is the root, the E is the third, the G is the fifth, and the B is the seventh. And it's the same for any of these. So G7 is G, B, D, F, essentially. Yes, that's how you can work them out. We kind of looked at that. And we like to number our chords as well. So for instance, this down here, we've got kind of Roman numerals. It's kind of a convention to put them uppercase if it's a major chord and lowercase if it's a minor chord. But not everyone does that, so don't get caught out with that. And then I've pasted down here, this is a really common thing, you see it a lot, it's kind of like a chord progression flowchart. So this is using the cycle of fifths, basically, and these ones here that are predominants are kind of coming from going towards the dominant chord, and the dominant chord in the key is chord 5, which typically moves to chord 1, particularly in jazz a lot of the time. And what you can do with the predominants and the dominants is you can see you've got 2 or 4. Well, if you actually look at it, chord 2 and chord 4 have a lot of the same notes in them actually. So if we look at chord 2, D, F, A, C, but then if we look at chord 4, we've got the F, A, C in it. So it actually shares 3 of the same notes. So they're quite interchangeable as chords. So that's what that's about. So instead of a chord 2, you could use a chord 4. Instead of a chord 5, you could use a chord 7 if you want. So the most common chord progression probably in kind of jazz standards is 2, 5, 1. And it just keeps going around, 2, 5, 1. All the time they might go to other keys, which is something we're not going to really do with this, because it's quite basic, but they might go to a lot of different keys doing 2, 5, 1s. If you want an example of that, a really good example is Giant Steps. So that goes 2, 5, 1 in 3 different keys and 5 1s in those keys as well. But it's a breakneck speed, so it's quite hard to follow what's going on. But that's basically it. It's not actually that advanced from a harmony point of view. So the way this kind of works is you can you might want to start at chord 1 and then it goes to an asterisk, which kind of means go anywhere. So if we went from chord 1, that would be C major 7. If we went to chord 3, that would be E minor 7. Then chord 6 is A minor 7. Then we could go to chord 2, which is D minor 7. Then chord 5, which is G7. And then back to chord 1, which is C major 7. And this basically travels around the cycle of fifths, is what this is doing. So really common chord progressions. And particularly in jazz and jazz standards, you really find that 2-5-1s or 6-2-5-1 is super common, right? So we're going to use that. If you are feeling that's quite basic, then I have put down here some of the more advanced chords we were talking about, like major 9s, minor 11s, major 7 with a sharp 11, 13 on the dominant, minor 11s, and this one is quite good as just on its own, really is what it is. So what we're going to do is use these, and we are going to pump them into the kind of template in Musescore that I've given you. So I've put in C major 7 and G7 there. Some of you that may be thinking a bit further ahead will understand why they are, but if you don't worry. So what I'm going to do is, let's say I've got this open, and I'm going to open that so I can see at the same time. Right, so I'm just going to come up with a chord progression. So I'm at C major 7. I don't really want to repeat any chords, so I'm going to click on the little rest there, and I'm going to press Command K, right? K for chord, not the best spelling, but K for chord, right? Command K. And we can just pick any of these, really. So that A minor 7 sounds good. Let's go A minor 7. A minor 7. Now, when you do this, you have to focus on spelling it correctly. So AM7, right? No spaces, nothing like that. You return. And it's going to kind of play these notes. It's going to play with the piano sound rather than electric guitar. We can fix that later, but don't worry for now. And then let's go for Command K again. Let's go E minor 7. And let's Command K it. And let's go for G7. I'm kind of doing this at random, to be honest. You know, there are a lot of thought processes, and this is where, if we start to look at this, we're on chord 5, G7. So chord 5 goes to chord 1. So I think, okay, chord 1, that's C major 7. Let's use that. C major 7. And this is where, there we go. This is where, with this G7 here, I might work backwards. So the cycle of fifths, so I'm at 5. What comes before 5? 2. So I'm going to put a D minor 7 because that's chord 2. So let's click on that, Command K, D minor 7. And then I might go, oh, what's before chord 2, which is D minor 7? Oh, that's chord 6. A minor 7, let's stick an A minor 7 in. So it's actually going to be a nice chord progression. Yeah, so let's before we move on to that, let's start thinking about melody, right? So I've got a little synth part here, you know, thinking more modern jazz that might use a synthesizer, maybe it would be kind of fun. So we could think about just putting keynotes in here. We can add like melodic ideas and scales and stuff like that to connect notes later, but just think keynotes. So I'm going to click on this N for note input, and then I'm going to select semi-breves, right? And I'm going to think about C major 7. C major 7 has a C, an E, a G, and a B in it. Any one of those 4 notes will sound great on this chord. The more jazzy one was probably the B, so let's stick that in, right, as the 7th note. Then we've got A minor 7, so if we look across here, A minor 7 is A, C, E, and G. Any of those notes will sound really, really good. So I could think here, do I want to, from the B note, do I just want to create a smooth part and go up to C, which is in that chord, or down to an A? Doesn't really matter. Or do I want to jump? Maybe I want to jump. But for now, I'm just going to move stepwise, like that. And now, because we did a step, I might think, actually, I want to jump because it's going to get boring else. So we've come up, stepped up, so maybe we're going to jump down. So E minor 7 has an E, G, B, and a D in it. So let's jump down to a G. Not much thought process there. It's in the chord. Here, we could even keep the same note. Let's keep the same note there, because a G is obviously in a G chord. Next bar, C major 7. So last time we had a B, so let's do something different this time. This time, let's jump up. Right, so C, E, G, B. Let's jump up to an E. We haven't done that one yet. And then this chord over here, A minor 7, so we've got A, C, E, G. So we can keep going up. Let's go up to G. And then D minor 7, D, F, A, and C. So let's maybe fall to the F. Well, let's maybe not. Let's go to the. Let's jump down to the C, which should be the 7th. So that's slightly jazzier sound. And then I'm going to land on maybe the B or the G, or go up to the D. Doesn't really matter. Now, so we've got our keynotes in. Now, what we could do, you could just leave it there if you want, but if you want to actually start to make it more musical, you might think, well, this one, I could half the rhythm. So it's currently a 7 groove, so I'm going to half it. And then I'm going to click in another one of these over here to fill in the kind of gap. And you see now we've got like a scale joining that was our original keynote, that's the next one. But we've got this kind of like passing note that kind of joins the two together. And we could do that here, we could put a few in. So let's convert this to so it was a C. Let's come down in a scale like that. Scale going up, nice jump down. You don't want to have the whole melody scalic. If it's all scalic, it will have 0 character. Right, the jumps actually give it a bit of character as a melody. So once we've got that, it says repeat A section as above. So I'm going to copy this part out, right, because the last chord, if you know, is different. I've chucked in a different chord there for you. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste that in here, like that. And this originally up above was a B, like that. So we could go back to a B there, or we could change it for a C, which would be kind of interesting. So that it's got a different note to start with, but then it's kind of the same. And then here we're going to do something different, but I might come back to that bar later. So you've got like an 8-bar idea, and then pretty much the same, but you want to change some stuff around. So here, like, we could go to a D or an F maybe instead of that one. So it's just got a slightly different end, and it will have a different thing in this bar as well, because it's a different chord. So we're going to look at the next section, which is the B section. So it should be contrasting to the A section, right? So we're going to switch keys, not very far away, but we're going to switch to a different key. We're going to switch to the key of A minor, which is the relative minor of C major. So it's got fairly similar notes. But we're going to use the harmonic scale for most of it. So the harmonic, kind of A minor harmonic is A, B, C, D, E, F. So all the white notes, but G is sharpened. The 7th note of A minor is sharpened. So G is a sharp. But don't worry too much about this, but there are some instances where I've not sharpened it. So on this one, chord 1 I've not, on chord 3 I've not, but on that one I definitely have on chord 5, right? So, but there's an explanation here you can look at if you want as to why I've done that. And we can use the same sort of cycle because it's just a cycle of fifths. You'll notice that the upper and lower cases are different, but apart from that, it's really still works great, this kind of idea. So let's keep that nice and clear up there. And then if we look at here, I've already given you the beginning and the end. The beginning is to establish that we're now in A minor, whereas the G7 is to help us move back to C, because it's chord 5 in C to chord 1 in C, which you'll see if you look at this up here. Chord 5 to chord 1, G7 to C7 is one of the most powerful moves you can make in music. So going G7 to C is going to be really, really powerful to bring us back to this key. In fact, before we even do this section, we can do the last section. So let's go up here and grab out all this stuff. From the top system is what we want it from. Let's copy all that. Now when you copy, it tends to copy a lot of like the text and stuff, so I'm just going to get rid of that when it pastes, so paste it in. I didn't take too much actually. So again, then we might want to just change the ending. Let's make it down there. So that's it. I might change it a bit more than that, some chords maybe, but that'll do for now. So it is different. So you can see how quick that was, right? We wrote our first 8 bars, pasted in the second 8 bars, but just changed a little bit, pasted in the last 8 bars, but changed something else. And then in this section, our B section, we are going to look at the different chords that are B section chords, right? And they are here. So, well, and we could use this pattern again. So before 5 comes 2, right? So at the end, we'll do something a little bit different there actually. So we work off the beginning, so A minor 7. So chord 1 can go anywhere. So let's go to D minor 7, right? D minor 7, and then so we're at chord 4. So let's look. We're in the pattern. So chord 4 can go to chord 5 or chord 7, essentially. So we could go up to 5, or we could go to 7, which would be cool. We've not really had that kind of diminished sound yet, so let's do that. So I'm going to Command K, G sharp. Now, if you're writing sharps on a Mac keyboard, I think it's Alt 3 to get that to work. There you go, G sharp, dim 7, and then if we're at chord 7, 7 goes to 1 or 3. So let's go to 3, which is C major 7. Yeah, and then 3 goes to 6, which in this key is F major 7. Let's put that in. And then 6 goes to 2 or 4, right? So we've already had 4, so we could do 2 here. But I might want to speed this up to kind of go through here. If you're interested, don't worry about if you don't get this, but right here I'm going to put pivot chord, D minor 7. If you're wondering what the hell do you mean, John, by pivot chord, sorry, my mouse has just disappeared or gone a bit crazy. Where's it gone? I don't know, my mouse is fading. I use my keyboard, laptop one instead. So what is a pivot chord? Well, this chord is in both keys. It's in the key of A minor 7, it's there, but it's also in the key of C major 7, right? So if we looked at the chords up here, it's also C major 7, or in the key of C, D minor 7 is there, right? So it's in both keys, so it's a pivot chord for that, but it's also in the key of C, chord 2, and then this is 5, and then we go to 1 when we come back here. So we've got 2, 5, 1 here. And then we could look at, in this key though, in the key of A minor, it is chord 4, and before 4 we usually get a 6. So if we go back here, I might actually move this one to here, so that we get a really nice kind of cyclo-fifths type chord progression. And then here we could just put anything we like, really. We've not had kind of a, let's just think what would be a nice sort of sound that we've not really had much of yet. Or just trying to think if we can get the E7 in, because that we could change, instead of this one, if you looked at a cycle, let's put E7 there instead of the diminished chord. And then here, chord 5 usually goes to chord 1, so A minor 7, and then here, Command K, let's put our C here, that'd be nice. There we go. So same thing as above, really. Then I'm going to think about, well, what notes are in these chords, and how I can kind of create a melody. So our melody above kind of goes down and up, right, and then kind of back down. So let's start low and go up. So if we start with an A on A to help establish it as a new key, and then let's jump up to the C maybe, which in D minor 7 is the 7th note. And then the E, we could come back kind of down It'd be cool to get the G sharp in it, right? The G sharp in that chord, because it's a really interesting note. And then pull that back up to the A. That's a really common move with the G sharp, is for it to come back up to the A in the next chord. And then let's keep going back up. But we could use a B on C major 7, because the B is the 7th note. And then we could have a C, which is in the F chord. C's there. And then D, we could have a D in the D. And then, so we've got a kind of rising melody type thing. And we could keep the D on the G7 chord. So then we have two kind of contrasting melodies. We could fill it in by like doing the same thing and adding some extra notes in to kind of make nice scales and runs and stuff like that. But we've got a basic idea of a whole piece now that kind of works really nicely. So you can play it through. There. So the one bit we need to fix is this bit. If you wonder why I left it, it's because it's kind of like a link between this key and the next key. So I'm looking at that note's an A and that note's like an F. So I might like try and create like an idea here to connect the two. So if we put like a load of rhythms in, and so we're at an A, we could like think about running down to it. So we could kind of like do a rundown like that to it. Or try and include the G sharp in this chord by doing a different kind of run, like that. Let's go. We could do like an arpeggio. So E, we look at this chord E7, right? So it's got E, D, B, G sharp. I've got all the notes in the chord. That might be quite nice. And then do you see that's, so we've got the F coming down nicely, slipping down to the E, but then a run down through an arpeggio to get to the A, because then you've got the G sharp, which comes up nicely to the A. So that's it, really. There's loads more things you could have a look at. If you want to look at more advanced chords, then in the minor key, I've got them here. You can take a screenshot. There you go. And you can experiment with using much more advanced chords. The one thing you might want to do is if I select all of these chords, I'm using Shift to kind of like select the first and last bar. If you're on, oh, you need to include this one as well up here, or 4 systems of it. All right, if I selected all of that in the chords, what we could do is if you've got a new version, a fairly recent version of Musescore, is if you go up to Tools, you can go Realize Chord Symbols, and it will plug in chord kind of notated chords like that for you. The only thing is that it chucks in these really low bass notes. To be honest, what you need to do is like delete those out and then create a bass part, which you can remember you can change the instruments by going to Edit and Instruments, and then so we can then like search through this kind of list of sounds and find stuff, and then like add them and remove things and stuff. But don't remove parts you spent ages writing on, because I should lose it all. But you can kind of like remove all these bass notes that are way too low and then put in an actual bass part. But it will give you the kind of guitar sounds then, or whatever instrument that you put here. So you can do that to realize the chords if you want on the kind of instrument that you've picked for it too. So yeah, definitely see if you can have a go at writing a jazz standard. So basically start off with the basic template in Musescore, and then just if you want to try and use this flowchart, great. If not, you can just kind of pick random chords and see how that turns out. And then try and create a melody that uses notes within those chords. So if you pick a D minor 7, try and use a key melody note that's like a D, F, A, or a C. And below I've got more advanced sounds like the F major 7 sharp 11 chord. It's got up the top here an asterisk for like the B is the kind of sharp 11 because it's the interesting notes. Like you would probably try and use those maybe. It would sound really cool in the melody and somehow. And then yeah, see what you can come up with and see what it sounds like. And one last little thing that you might want to do is sometimes what can be kind of cool to attempt is if you've got, for instance, let's try and pick a bar like this one, right? So A is the note we want to hit because it's an A chord. What I'm going to do is do the thing where I kind of half the rhythm. And what I'm going to do this time though is have this first note when the chord hits not be A, be above A. So what this is going to do is it's going to clash and create like some tension. Then when it hits this note, it will resolve because it goes into the chord. And this is a really common jazz sort of approach, right? It's like you're hitting a note that's like one away from the notes you actually mean harmonically. And then you're going to resolve. And then more contemporary jazz often won't even bother to resolve it. They'll just kind of stay on the tension. But you can experiment with that as you kind of want, really. So yeah, just see if the challenge really is to see if you can write a small little jazz tune, use the kind of typing the chords in using Command K, and yeah, see how you get on.